Yo, what's up? My name is Mars. I've got a pretty quick video for you today. Came up with the idea because two of my friends, both Differous and Eric of Has Pass Broke, I've heard from both of them that they wanted to understand how to do 1920s like radio voice mix or edit or whatever you call it. You know, that classic sound of a shitty cheap radio with the voice coming over it. So yeah, it's a pretty easy thing to make. You really just gotta understand the things behind the sound. Um yeah, we'll jump right into it. All right, so let's get right into this here. Like I said, this is a pretty easy sound. You can do it with pretty minimal plugins or mixing knowledge. Let's go through the 3/4 things you would need to create this sound. You are going to need an equalizer, ideally a graphic equalizer with like a line that you can bend, put different filters in or something. You can get these as free VSTs. You don't need to pay any money to make a sound like this. You're gonna need some sort of distortion or overdrive. Again, you can find all sorts of free VSTs that do overdrive. Ideally, you would have one that has a high-low, bandpass filter that you can select which portion you want to be overdriving. Uh, Anything else doesn't really matter. You just gotta find one that sounds good. And you will 100% need a compressor. Again, all available for free. Trying to think of any good ones I know of, but I'm drawing a blank. Doesn't really matter. You just need a compressor. And I guess we'll work backwards and describe what this is doing. Um, just a small footnote, this over here, the dynamic tube, that's simulating analog tube being used to amplify something, and it's also simulating some of the distortion that it can do. Not entirely necessary, but when you think about, I guess, that naive implementation of creating this sound, it fits in there, and we'll get to why that is in there. All right, so step one is a compressor. I've got the ratio turned all the way up to 9, as almost acting as a limiter. You could technically use a limiter to do this. I like a compressor specifically for demonstrating this because you can see what the audio does. So let's watch the audio levels in this compressor's graph and see what's happening to them as they go through it. I've got a little test audio clip, so let's give it a listen. Testing 1, 2, 3. This is a 1920s old school radio voice. Testing 1, 2, 3. All right, so some of the growliness in there is just my voice being fucked up. You're not adding any like octaves or into this or anything, but you could see what was happening on the graph. We're bringing the volume down significantly when everything is happening, and we increase the output, so we normalize the volume again, because when you do really strong compression, you're gonna make it a lot quieter, so you just need to turn up the output. I've got the dry wet set to 100%, because when you think about what happens when a shitty radio transceiver is sending out audio information, it is being compressed physically because it cannot fit into the bandwidth of the band on which it is being broadcast. There's obviously a lot more intricacies to that, but that's the main kind of muffly, boomy sound that I guess it's kind of hard to distinguish, but that you hear in these types of, you know, radio transmissions or like walkie-talkies, pilots radio and stuff. It is heavily compressed, so that's why we've got the compressor. All right, next up we've got some sort of overdrive or distortion. That's the fuzziness or crunchiness that you hear on the sound. This comes from just poor amplification, different things clipping in the signal chain of a real 1920s radio broadcast or something, or as well as kind of poor mics. Like I've got a microphone that hooks up to a tape recorder that came with that tape recorder, and that mic makes a very similar sound to this, including the equalizer. You can just set the drive to whatever you want. You want to make it sound good. There's two knobs on this. You play with them so they sound good. You don't need to have the dry wet in any specific space to make this sound authentic. You just play with it till it sounds good, or use this as a bass line, but every overdrive plugin is going to be different. The EQ it's looking kind of super technical, but that's just because I did it quick and dirty. Um, the only things that really matter in this EQ are these points right here, these 2 points. They are bringing down a lot of the low end up to around 182 hertz and bringing down most of the high end up to 2.9 kilohertz. This is simulating the signal chain of, a 1920s broadcast by a not so good microphone is not going to have as good a frequency response range as whatever you're recording on as a voice actor or whatever, musician, everything. So, you want to emulate that by cutting down the sides, because the higher and lower frequencies being picked up, it's going to sound like much more clearer. You're going to be covering much more. And that is also why we've got the bandpass filter on the overdrive set to around the same parameters. So yeah, that's doing that. And lastly, I'm going to talk about the dynamic tube, which I already sort of talked about. It is not needed at all, although you can probably find some VSTs. I'm not aware of any, so it is completely optional. And I guess we're just going to play this clip on repeat and turn on and off a couple of these things so you could hear what they're doing. We'll start with the dynamic tube to show you that you really don't need it. Testing 1, 2, 3. This is a 1920s old school radio voice. So yeah, that's not doing too much. The overdrive is doing a lot of work, and you will hear that when I turn it off. Testing 1, 2, 3. This is a 1920s old school radio voice. Testing 1, 2, 3. So yeah, you can still hear how heavily compressed it is. It's still kind of sounding like what you would expect out of this voice, along with the EQ. However, you can see that the overdrive is really important into getting the correct sound. The compressor, we'll take that off next. Testing 1, 2, 3. This is a 1920s old school radio voice. So what the compressor is doing, it's making most things pretty much the same volume. It's basically clipping everything without distorting it too much. And the EQ. Testing 1, 2, 3. This is a 1920s old school radio voice. So, that's kind of the EQ profile for this sound, and you can hear without it, it's just normal speaking. So yeah, that's pretty much it. You can definitely create this sound in any application that lets you use VST plugins. I'm not sure if Audacity does, but I'm pretty sure it should. You could, if you're trying to do this for voice acting or whatever, you can literally load up pretty much all of these plugins in OBS, copy this signal chain, and you can pretty much make this sound in OBS and then just record your voice through that. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you have fun using this sound, and I hope that explains it well. Thanks for watching.